Imagine you found a great job on LinkedIn. The job looked perfect for you, but your resume is the same generic one that you have sent for across 50 companies. But what if you could tailor your resume based on the company, based on the organization, based on the role at this very moment? That will be the theme of the first project that we'll be making in the MERN plus AI series, the Resume Refiner. But like all good things, we'll start small. Today we'll teach our server how to do CRUD operations. We'll not involve databases yet, but we'll use in-memory variables to carry out this operation. So let's get started. All right, in the last class, we saw that how we were able to spin up our server using Node and the file name. And then we saw a message here confirming that a server is up and running. Finally, we were able to issue the request from our browser and see the response that we have created in the server side. Now the problem here, guys, is that if I make any changes to my server, let's say I say welcome to second class and save the file. If I reload my browser, I will not see that change. In order for my change to be reflected, I need to manually kill my server and restart it again. You see? And then now when I'll issue a request, I'll see the change. So what this basically means is every time I make some change in my code base in the server side, I will have to manually do this step again and again, which is what I don't want to do. And for that, I will involve and install a package called as Nodemon, like how we had installed Express, right? Similarly, a new package that I want to install is Nodemon. npm install Nodemon. Now, additional thing is that I don't want this package to be shipped with my actual product. Okay, I just want it for my development. So there's a flag that we can do in such cases, and that is save dev. So basically use this package only in the development environment and don't ship it in the final product. All right, so let's install this quickly. And then when we come to the package JSON file, we'll see that this package is now included in the dev dependencies, not as part of the regular dependencies. Okay, so that is the thing. Let me show you one more interesting thing. Let me add a script. Now, as I mentioned in the last video, that we can also create our custom scripts. So let's say I am defining a start script. It is already node server.js, which is fine. Let's say I am saying if I want to start in my dev environment, in my development environment, then I will use Nodemon server.js. Okay, so if I write something like npm run dev, you see now that this command Nodemon server.js gets run behind the scene, and if you see one thing, it is watching for changes in all such files. All right, let us test it. So if I say welcome to the second class, just give it some suffix. As soon as I saved it, it restarted my server. So when I refresh, you see, when I issue a new request, I'll get the updated code, updated response from the server. So this is the first package that you will need in your development environment. Okay, cool. Okay, so now that our server is a little bit more alive, let's give it something to remember. Not like a full database yet, but some static arrays, which will be static resume entries, using which we'll play and do the CRUD operations with our server. Let's get started. Now every app needs data, okay? And our app will store resumes, job descriptions, and tailored versions, right? To refine the resumes. But before we bring in database, let us create a in-memory variable, okay? So right now our resumes variable contains two resume objects, which contains the ID, the name, a role, experience, skills, and the tailored for version, which later will update it using the AI. Okay. So this is the two resume, you can say, dummy object that currently we have, using which we'll do the CRUD operations. All right. So let us start with a get route. We'll define a get route to return all the resumes. Okay, so we'll say app dot get We'll define an endpoint. Let's say our endpoint is resumes, and then a route handler. Correct? If you remember, we have two objects, request and response, provided by express. And for now, just return the response, send back the resume in the JSON format. So for that, we'll use response.json and the variable name which stores our resumes. That is it. Plain and simple. The changes are done. The Nodemon has restarted our server. Let us test this out. So we'll come to our browser, change the URL to resumes, and you see the resume getting returned from our server. And again, of course, you can inspect and go to network tab, refresh it, and see the resumes coming. This is your server responding to the request issued from the browser in the JSON format. JSON is the most common way to interact and exchange information with the server, and that is what we'll be using. So right now we can read the resumes, but what if you want to create one? In order to create a resume, we have to enable our servers to receive the data from the client side, from the user side. And to do that, we have to enable JSON parsing in our server, because user will submit the form, submit the resumes, and the data will come to us in form of raw strings, and we need to convert, we need to be able to parse it and create a valid JavaScript object out of it. And for that purpose, we'll use a middleware. Okay, so let me just write this and then we'll discuss more. We'll write something like app.use express.json. Okay, so what this line is a middleware. Now we'll discuss a little bit more in details about middlewares in the coming classes. We'll create our own custom middlewares. For now, just understand this in this way. If someone sends a request, user sends a request when they're submitting the form, when they're submitting the resume, what we are telling Express is, please read it, parse it, understand it, and make it available to me in request.body. Parse the data and make that data available to me in form of a valid JavaScript object inside request.body. All right. So let me just in fact break it down a little bit more. Let's talk about middlewares. In Express, middlewares are like checkpoints. Right? We can have multiple middlewares in the journey, and each of these middlewares can look at the request, can transform the request, log the request, or maybe even decide to stop the request from going further. And express.json is one such built-in middleware. Its job is simple. If the request content type is application JSON, if the user is sending a JSON data to our server, the purpose of express.json is to convert that data into a valid JavaScript object and make it available in request.body. Now the question you might have is, what is app.use? App.use is a method which is used to register our middlewares. Basically what we are asking Express is, hey, I will pass a middleware inside app.use. Please run this middleware, which is nothing but a function. Please run this function before any of the route handlers are triggered. Correct? So assume these middlewares to be like guards, to be like checkpoints. They will be the first one to process, to transform your request, and then the remaining route handlers will come into picture. All right. So to recap what we are discussing here, express.json will process the user request and parse the JSON request, the JSON body, into a valid JavaScript object. What will app.use do? App.use will register that middleware so that it runs even before any of my route handlers run. Okay, now that we have discussed about express.json and which is the built-in middleware, let us discuss and define the route to handle the resume creation part. Okay, and for that we'll define a post route. App.post our endpoint will remain the same, resumes, and then we'll define a route handler which will have request and response in the callback. Now you see the endpoint remains the same, but since the method variable, the method here will be different, which is get here and the post here. These are two different routes and their corresponding handlers are different. Okay, so now we are defining the route handler for the post method for my resume endpoint. So let's say now that I have my express.json, I know that any request, any data that comes from the client side will be available in request.body. Okay, so let us pull the data from request.body. So request.body will have all the details which will be filled in from the form. So let's say we'll on the UI will have a form which will ask for the name of the user, the role, maybe the skill, the experience. So we'll create a form and then pull out all those details from the form. So let's say I'll have name, I'll have role, I'll maybe have skills, okay, and maybe experience. Let's say we'll have 4 fields in the form, and when user hits the form, all that data will be available in request.body, and we're just pulling out those fields from the request.body. All right, let us have some basic validations here also in place in our server side. So it will say maybe name and role are the mandatory fields. So we'll say if name is not filled, or if the role is not filled, if any of these fields are left empty, I want to return back an message saying that. So let's say this is an error from the client side, right? So what error code we generally use when there's something wrong in the client side? 400. Okay, 400. If something is wrong from the client side, you might have seen 404 message, which is the when a client tries to access a resource which is not present, we send back a 404 a resource not found error. So these are status codes. We'll learn more about these status codes as we progress in our series. So response.status 400. Since this is the error path, and let's say I want to send back a JSON message saying that name and role are required. Now you might be thinking that, hey, I can have these checks in my client side as well, and you should always definitely have it. But when it comes to defining your APIs in your backend code, in your server code, please do not just rely on the checks on the client side, right? You should always have these additional robust checks on your server code as well, especially the ones that are more important from the application, from a system point of view. Okay, so let's say if everything looks okay, let us create a new entry, const new resume. We need the ID. So maybe for now we can just have date.now to keep the timestamp as the ID. We can involve, there are packages for us to have a more unique ID. There are different ways, and we'll explore that when we create our projects in full-fledged form shortly. So name, role, skills. Let me just fill all of this, experience, and we will also have tailored for not just hard coded to be null. We're not involving AI right now. We're just learning CRUD operations. Now let's say a new resume object is created. You can also do console logs, guys, to kind of check for any intermediate, how your current variable shape looks like. New resume. And then finally, what we'll do when our new resume is created, we'll push it in our existing array. So we'll say resumes.push and new resume. Correct? Now what I need to do, I need to tell back to my client that, hey, your create operation was successful. So response.status. What status code do you think we can use? Whenever the user request is successful, the status code generally we use are 200 series, right? 200 for a successful get request, 201 for a successful creation or updation, correct? So 201 here in this case. Send back a JSON, a more descriptive message saying that maybe resume added successfully. And then additionally, we can also send back the data, which is the new resume. Now these JSON keys that you're seeing, message and data, and these are dependent upon how you want to define your system. But let's say decide on one thing and keep it consistent. Like you can define a message key here in your JSON response, and then you can, in the front end side, you can expect a message key in the response, and you can use that message to display like a pop-up or alert message, right? So the idea is, it's not hard, it's not mandatory to use these key names, but stick to one pattern and follow that throughout your application. It will be easier when you're creating more APIs, more endpoints. Okay, so what's happening, just let me recap. We are reading name, role, skill, and experience from user request body, where how is the data available to us. When a user will submit the form in the front end and hit submit button, that data will come to me, to the server, and from there I will extract all these fields. I'm doing a basic check. We can have more such checks depending upon the business use case, right? We are using date not now for the unique ID, pushing it in the existing list of resumes and returning back a response with an appropriate status code as well, right? Saving it. Now, how do I test this endpoint? For get, it was simpler. I can issue the request from the browser and basically see the response. But right now in my client side, I don't have the form yet. I don't have the form to pass the data. Then how do I even check and validate this endpoint? Correct? For that, let us use a very interesting tool called as Postman. You can download the Postman, and depending upon the system that you're using, you will see a Mac or a Windows option. Download it. Okay. Now I have it here ready. I'll just open it for you. This is how the interface of Postman looks like. You'll see a collections list here. I mean, for you, it might be empty if you're using it for the first time. Basically, you can create like a folder or grouping of the APIs. So let me create a fresh collection. Okay, let me create a blank collection and give it a name, Tapovan. All right. So we have a Tapovan collection here. We can add a new request, right? And let's say I'm creating a resume creation. And just give it a name so that it's easier for me to kind of locate it easily. You can see the different methods, HTTP verbs, get, put, post, patch, delete, and this is how you can test your APIs. Right now we want to do a post operation. What is the URL? Localhost resumes, correct? This was the URL that we had defined, and the method is post. Let me confirm. App.post URL is localhost. 3000 is because our server is running on 3000, and then /resumes is whatever endpoint is. All right, and now look carefully. Okay, look closely. Now we need to define the request body. We'll learn all these tabs also shortly. We can pass authorization keys, the tokens, and we'll cover it later. We can define different headers. Again, I will come to this later. For now, I want you to look at this body tag. We'll come to this body tag, come to this raw, and make sure you have the JSON is selected by default. And here we'll pass a JSON request. Okay. And how does the JSON request looks like? It should have your key and value enclosed in double quotes. So we need name, role, experience, and skill. ID will get generated automatically in our server side. So let's say we are saying name is new applicant. And role is, let's say you are applying for a role of AI engineer. When we are creating forms, maybe we can give drop downs. Okay. Experience, let's say maybe 4 years. Skills, this can be an array. Let's say I'm saying Python, Node, what else? Maybe AI. Okay, let's keep it like this. And this is how our request looks like. All right. So what we have done, let me recap. We created a collection. We added a new request. We changed the method as per our requirement. Okay. We defined the URL. We defined the body in the JSON format. We gave it a valid JSON. Now this will connect to our server, pass this request to our server, and then our server will process it. This is how the server will process it. Let me just do a console log for you of our request.body. In fact, let me just console the whole request itself for you all. All right, so let me issue the request. How do you issue the request? Hit the send button. All right, so we see that it was successful. Our status code that we had defined, now we see the status code. We see the message, resume added successfully, and the data, the ID got generated. The name, role, skills, experience, tailored fault is null. So this operation was successful. Let us look at our logs. Since I had printed the entire request object, so it's a pretty big object, okay? Right, let me just quickly show you the important ones. If you remember in the first video, I told you that this request object has every detail regarding the request that is issued from the client side, right? So you will see that our request was in a readable state, in a buffer format, okay? All those socket information which we don't need. Let me just discuss with you some important ones. All the request timeout, the headers timeout, these details have come, okay? And let me show you some important ones where we have the request body and all of that. I just want to come to that. Too many information, right? Which we don't need. It's a pretty big object. You see the content type as application JSON. The user agent is postman. So it identifies from where this request had come, correct? And the URL was resumes. The method was post, okay? Everything is present in this request, and we'll probably take a lot of these values from the request objects in our coming classes. We might need the body, the URL, the method, and depending upon that, we can take different steps. Okay, I want to show you the request body, and let me show. This is the new object which got created. Let's do one thing. For the ease of discussion, let me just log request.body. And the server restarted again. Let me just change the name and issue a new request. Resume added successfully. And let us see this. Okay, so this is what is present in request.body. The data, the JSON data that was sent from the client side. And if you remove the express.json middleware, you will see that this line is empty. Maybe you can try it out and let me know in the comments if you're able to understand the importance of express.json and get a valid JavaScript object. All right. Okay, so now what we have done is we have added 2 new resumes, right? So let us add a request to get back the list of resumes. We'll say fetch resumes. The request can be get again, localhost resumes, send button, and what we see now is our resume number 1, resume number 2, resume number 3. Okay, maybe we only have 3 resumes. New applicant 2. Let's add the other one also, new applicant 1, and let us check if that reflects in the get method now. John Doe, Jane Smith, applicant 2, and the applicant 1, right? So this is how we are able to now do a get and a post request. For some reason this reflects still as let me save this. Now it updated to post. So now we have the post and the get endpoints working correctly, and we have validated that using the postman. Okay, so we have learned how to get the resumes. We have learned how to add a resume. But resumes will not always be static once created, right? Your skills will increase, your experience will grow, your achievements will also grow. So we need to enable our servers to cater to this changing resume content. For that, now we'll discuss about the put method, or the update in the CRUD operations. Okay. Now one thing to note here is that when you're updating or deleting something, or maybe if you're trying to fetch the details of a particular entity, for example, when you go to an e-commerce application, you are checking all the mobile phones. So that is getting all the mobile phones. But let's say you want to get the details of a particular mobile phone. So you need to pass some identifier that I want the detail about this particular brand, this particular model, etc., and so on. So we need to pass some identifier, correct? And that is where our request parameters come into the picture. So let us see that. For example, let's say this is the get request to get list of all the resumes that exist, correct? Currently we have different resumes. Let's say I want to get the detail of one particular resume with ID as one. Okay, let me just create a request, add a request. Let's give it a name, get resume by ID. Okay, so I'll say localhost resumes, but I don't want all the resumes. I just want resume with ID 1. Correct? It can be ID 1, it can be ID 2, or it can be any other IDs, for example. So now I need to define my route in such a way that it is catering to this dynamically changing IDs, correct? And that is where my request parameters come into picture. All right. So how we define here is we say app, the method is get. The endpoint now looks like this, slash resumes. And now we need to have a placeholder for the dynamically changing ID. And how we define that is using a colon. Okay. So when you define a route with a colon, like resumes ID, the colon is the URL parameter, a placeholder that will change depending upon what request is being issued. Okay. So we have a route here. Now let us define the route handler, request response. Let me just have a console here. Okay. Request.params. Let us send the request. Nothing will happen. I'm not returning anything. So this will still wait for a response. But this is what I wanted to show you. This is my request parameter. This is my request params object, and you see ID too. So what I need to do is, if I just basically whatever text you are writing here in the placeholder, that is how you will access the parameter. So request.params.id. Let me send the request again, and you will see the value coming up as 2. Now that you have understood about URL parameters, the request params object, now we will do the updating part in the CRUD operation. Okay, now we know how to fetch the IDs from the URL. Now if we want to update a particular URL using app.put method, what we need to do is we need to figure out if that index, if that ID that the user has passed exists in our system, in our database, in our records or not. So we'll try to find that ID, and then we'll fetch that particular resume based on the ID and then update whether, let's say, user might have changed their name, highly unlikely, but let's say they have changed a name or a role or a skill, anything, whatever they have passed as the updated information. We'll need to update the entity in our system accordingly. Okay. So we'll say app.put for update methods. The URL that will look like is slash resumes. And then again, we'll have the placeholder for the ID, whatever ID that they're sending. And then my route handler, which has request and response in the callback. Correct. Now we'll try to extract the ID. How do we do that? We have already seen it. Request.params object. The variable is ID. If you would have given something like index here, then accordingly your name would have changed as index. Okay. So basically whatever name you're giving in the string, that is how you will access it here. We'll keep it ID for now. Now, generally, I mean, it's if you are storing IDs in your integer format, you will need to do a parse int. Okay, if your IDs are in integer format. Okay, so request, that is how now you've got the ID. Now we'll need to find this ID in our array. So we'll say const index. Resumes is our array. For now, we'll use a method find index to see if that index exists in our array, resume array or not. We'll say that get me that resume such that resume.id matches with the ID that is passed by the user. Okay. Now let's say if that index does not exist. If that index does not exist, then the find index will return me -1. Right? This is the array method. So if, let's say, the index returned is -1, which means that the resume was not found. So this is a scenario for the resource not found error. So what do we return? What status code do we return? Response.status 404 resource not found. We'll give it a descriptive message saying that resume not found. Okay. So this is your first check that you're doing to handle the ID not present. If let's say ID is present, then what I will do is I will take out all the information that the user has passed from request.body. Okay, it can be name, it can be role, it can be skill, it can be experience. Whatever user has passed, I will get all of that from request.body. Okay, and then finally I need to update that particular resume. So I'll say in my list of resumes, on that particular index, I will update the resume object. I will say whatever already exists, I will keep it as it is, resumes index. Okay, and then I will, if the user has given me a name, I'll take that, otherwise I'll let it remain as it is, resumes index dot name. So name, role, we'll say role, or resumes index dot role. Let me just duplicate this. We'll say skills, take skills, or resumes dot skills, experience, we'll take it updated with experience. For some reasons this shifting too much. Experience. Okay, all right. I think there was one more entry, right? Tailored for if you're tailored for changed, or use tailored for, provided by the user. This is how we are now updating the resume entity, completely replacing with a fresh new entity. Okay, when everything is done successfully, I will say response.json, send back a message saying resume updated successfully. Maybe I will also need to pass the new resume so that the changes can be reflected on the UI side. Okay, now we have taken care, we have enabled our server basically to update an entity. We can read the IDs from the URL. We'll search the array using find index. You can also use filter method and accordingly check for length as well. If not found, return a 404. Otherwise, update the entity sent from the request.body. Finally, send back the response as a confirmation. Okay, how do we test it? Let us very quickly come add a new request. This request will be update resume. The method will be put. The URL will be looking something. Let us update the entity 2. Okay, let us update the resumes with an ID of 2. Let's confirm first of all. This is the ID 2 where we have role as data analyst. Let's maybe change the role from data analyst to something like a full stack developer. Okay, so let's come to update resume. We'll have to come to the body tag again, to the raw selection and the JSON. Cool. Let us pass the new role. The new role will be full stack developer. All right, maybe add a new skill also. Let's say my skill has increased and now it is JavaScript, it is React, it is Node, and it is MongoDB. Right, we have become a full stack MERN stack developer. Okay, MongoDB. So whatever new values we are passing, those will be updated. So fresh new entity with these updated values will be taken. Whatever entities we're not updating, those will be copied over. Okay, let us try doing this. And we see resume not found. Reason being, let us discuss what might be the reason. It's good that we're getting some errors like this. Let's see the what might be the case. Okay. Now understand this. When we are passing an ID in the URL, right? This is generally in the string format. Okay, so we need to convert this from the string. We need to parse it back to an integer because my ID is in integer format. Okay, that is done. Let me just hit the send again, and now it says internal server error. tailored for is not defined. Alright, so let us hit the send button again, and we see 200. Okay, resume updated successfully, and the data with the ID, with the name. Now the role is full stack developer. The skills have been updated. Tailored for remains null. Correct. So now the backend has the power to evolve the resumes as the career changes. As you find a new job, you might want to add new skills to your resumes, and that is whatever Resume Refiner will be able to do with these changes. Let us very quickly transition and complete the delete part as well in the CRUD operation. Okay, so not all resumes will stay forever. As your experiences grows, your skills grows, some of the resume might get outdated. So we'll need to enable our server to carry out delete operations if a user wants that. So that is the last operation in the CRUD part of the operations that we wanted to do. Okay, so let us define that very quickly. We'll come to our Postman. We'll add a request. Okay, and we'll say delete resumes. Now delete, like updates, also generally have those identifiers because you want to delete generally a particular entity, correct? So how the URL will look like is pretty similar to the updates. We'll also pass an identifier, right, for what resume we want to delete, unless you want to delete the entire thing. Generally we don't want that. We generally want to delete a particular entity, right? So we'll have a identifier in the URL. And how do we define the the route here in the server? It's again the same pattern. The method will be delete this time. The URL will look like resumes, and we'll have a placeholder, okay, and then a callback, a route handler, which will have request and response objects. Okay, this will be same as how we had done earlier for the update. Again, we'll need to basically read the IDs from the URL request params, so that we'll need it again here. And either you can do the same approach, trying to figure out if that ID exists in our resume arrays or not, and if it is not found, return 404. That's again the same approach you can follow. Or maybe let's do it a little differently, just for the fun of it. Let's try to get the initial length from the resumes. So it will be resumes.length. Basically, I'll try to filter the resumes, saying that resumes, filter the resumes such that get me only those resumes such that resume IDs are not equals to the ID which the user has passed. So I'm just excluding that resume with the ID that the user has passed, and I'm keeping the remaining list of resumes. And I can just have a quick check if resumes.length is still same as my initial length, which means nothing happened, right? So basically the ID that the user has passed was probably not correct. So I'll say again, hey, you know what, you sent a wrong ID. So status code will be 404. The JSON message, little more descriptive, will be resume not found. Okay. Otherwise, if there's no issue, I can just send back a descriptive message again saying that, you know, your resume deleted successfully. Okay, let's test this out. So first, let us confirm, fetch all the resumes. We have ID1, ID2. Let us delete the one with the ID2. And the resume is now deleted successfully. Let us confirm by fetching our resumes again, and we have only one now. All right. The second resume with the ID2 is now deleted. Right. So this completes the CRUD operations using the static in-memory data. Now shortly in the coming classes, we'll add database, which is MongoDB, and now our server will remember, correct? Because right now what happens if when you restart your server, right? Let's say I kill this server, start again. And if I try to get the list of resumes, that the one which I deleted will come back again, right? Because when you restart your server, your variables are reinitialized. This was more for demo purpose. But now we'll add that MongoDB layer and make our server remember the operations that we are carrying out. Every great tool begins with small mindful steps. Today we gave our server the capability to remember things. Next we'll give it the gift of permanence so that the stories it reads are never lost. In the next video, I'll see you where we discuss the MongoDB and add a next layer to our project. Thank you.